Man, I've learned from trying to make this video for the past 2 days that making an intro is hard, so I guess this is going to be what it is. So, I've been thinking about the atomic weapons a lot, but more specifically, weird atomic weapons. And so I would like to present to you, whoever the fuck watches this, about weird atomic weapons I think are funny. First up, we have the Air-to-A Genie, a short-range nuclear air-to-air rocket. And I think the worst part about it is it's described as short-range, which you don't really want for a nuclear weapon. America, late 1940s, early 1950s, is going, the Soviets basically now have our B-29, which they turn into the Tu-4. They can now launch an attack on US mainland, and we don't really have a way to stop it. You know, we don't really have a missile defense system like the modern United States does now, or we don't have proper air-to-air missiles, and just throwing a bunch of rockets at a formation of aircraft isn't really effective. But we do have nukes. So, what about we take a rocket and we just put a nuke on it? And that's exactly what they did at the beginning, the project beginning in 1954 by the Douglas Aircraft Company. I mean, only one was ever actually fired in the series of Plum Bob tests, the Plum Bob nuclear tests, Plum Bob John nuclear test, where it was fired by, let me scroll, I'm on Wikipedia right now, by an F-89 Scorpion. It probably says here who fired it. Yes, it does. United States Air Force Captain Eric William Hutchinson. And US Air Force Captain Alfred C. Barbie was the radar operator. And the only one was ever fired, and it looks pretty cool. I'll probably have pictures here at some point. I think this is really funny. It had various code names, when they started developing it. Such code names being Big Dog, High Card, and a personal favorite, Ding Dong, which I think is great. It carried a yield of a 1.5 kiloton W-25 nuclear warhead, and was powered by a word I'm not going to be able to pronounce, so I'm just going to say the other things. It was powered by an SR-49-TC-1 solid fuel rocket engine. You cannot evade, because it travels at Mach 3.3. And it's got like what was the distance it was basically effective for? I think it was like 300 meters? Yeah. The lethal radius of the blast was estimated to be 300 meters. Plus, the fucking thermal radiation, so maybe your plane starts to fucking melt, who knows. Then you also have the regular fucking radiation. So, if you survive being blasted out of the air, you are still battered with a whole bunch of fucking forms of radiation. You're probably gonna die from cancer either in 2 weeks or 10 years, who really knows? There'll be different pictures going across, which I find, but there's a really cool one which I'm gonna put up, which is of the Convair F-106 from the California Air National Guard firing an inert version. But it's just, that's such a sick looking picture. Like, holy. I think that's pretty nifty. Right, actually back to information instead of me just rambling about cool pictures. It entered service with the designation MB-1 in 1957. A handful of rockets and 15 F-89 interceptors capable of using them. By the next year, 1958, 268 F-89s received the necessary wing pylon and fire control system to be able to fucking use it. It was also nicknamed Ding Dong by air crews and pilots, with about 3,150 rockets being produced before the production ended in 1963. With a year before, in 1962, it was given a upgrade, and it was also redesignated as the Air 2A Genie, which is as we know it now. It was given improvements with a longer flight duration because it could only fly originally for 12 seconds before detonation. In that 12 seconds, it did travel 6 miles, well, 6.2 miles or 10 kilometers, before detonating, but that's not very far, at least in my opinion. So they gave it a longer flight duration, and that's pretty much all it says about the modifications. With its inert versions being called the MB-1-T and later the ATR-2A, was produced in small numbers, and the training version given to the Canadian Air Force, they nicknamed the Dum Dum, which I think is pretty funny. So yeah, short-range air-to-air nuclear rocket. Because that makes sense. So I guess that's all I'm going to say about the Air 2 Genie. On to the next thing. The next thing I'd like to talk about is nuclear depth bombs. Like a depth charge, this is basically the same, just using a nuclear warhead instead of conventional explosives. And I didn't know about this until recently, which is shocking for me loving nuclear weapons as much as I do. I'd seen underwater tests before, but I didn't know that's what their purpose was. I was just like, haha, funny sploosh go whoosh, you know? I found out about this recently, only because I was looking up information about an atomic bomb I see fairly often. That sounds weird. I see it at museums often. The WE-177 was the primary airdrop nuclear weapon for the United Kingdom from the 1960s to the 1990s, with it having 3 variants, A, B, and C. The different variants all did slightly different things from what I can tell. The WE-177A had a variable yield of 10 kilotons or 0.5 kilotons, which is quite the drastic variable yield, but hey-ho, it is what it is. It's interesting because I also didn't know about this until reading about this, is that to the British Armed Forces it was known as Bomb Aircraft HE 600-pound MC. MC, standing for medium capacity, referred to nuclear weapons in the kiloton range, with the suffix HC being referred to of nuclear weapons in the megaton range, although apparently there were some anomalies. The 0.5 kiloton yield was only used as a nuclear depth bomb roll for detonation above 130 feet in shallow coastal waters, or in oceanic deep waters to limit damage to nearby shipping. The full 10 kiloton yield was used below 130 feet in deep oceanic waters where no shipping was at risk. The full 10 kiloton yield was also used by fixed-wing aircraft for surface attack, which is where this gets interesting, because it had airburst and ground burst, like most nuclear weapons do. Airburst being it detonates in the air, sending a shockwave down, or being used as a very high up EMP, but that requires a larger weapon. Ground burst meaning like a normal bomb, when it hits the ground it blows up, and it had laydown delivery, which is something I also forgot nuclear weapons did, where if they have a parachute, they can be gently hoisted to the ground by the parachute, lay down, and then after a certain amount of time, it will then go off. So it kind of taunts people, I guess. Imagine that this bomb comes down from the sky and just lays there in the road, and people are like, it didn't blow up. I guess we're lucky. 10 minutes later, the entire city is gone. So that'd be a little sad. The WB-177B was much larger, with a fixed yield of 450 kilotons. Unlike the A version, the B did not have the ability to be used as a depth charge. It only had airburst, impact, or laydown, which I think is quite interesting because, well, I guess it really depends on how you're getting the bomb across, because if you can't throw your nuke that far, you don't want it to have a massive explosion under your own boat or under your own land. That'd be pretty bad. And finally, the WE-177C, with a fixed yield of 190 kilotons. It was deployed in only RAF Germany as a tactical strike role, used by the Jaguar and later the Tornado. Two funny little planes I go Neum. I don't know a lot about planes, so please do bear with me. And from what I can see here, that also just was used as a fairly conventional warhead. It didn't have the depth charge version. The WE-177 series of bombs was used by a variety of different aircraft, including things like the Avro-Vulcan, the Sea Vixen, and the Tornado. Interestingly, I didn't know this whilst beforehand, but found out whilst researching about depth charges. The depth charge version was only used, only carried by helicopters, which only carried the WE-177A. Whilst things like the Sea Vixen and the Buccaneer Mark II also carried the A version, they did not have the ability to use the depth charge function. Only helicopters did, which I think that makes sense. Like, it's more precise than just kind of tossing a bomb into the ocean at speed. And I guess you could lower it down better, or you could like get it more accurate so it doesn't just also detonate on fucking hitting the water. And by that I don't mean like the bomb going off, I mean it just hitting the water and smashing like it hit a brick wall. Interestingly, the BAC TSR-2 was the only aircraft which could do a dive toss. Out of all of the other planes that used it, including things like the Jaguar and the Sea Harrier, it was the only plane that could use that as a delivery method. So pretty much it goes down real fast, it goes into a dive, and it pulls up really hard and very inaccurately just kind of throws it as far as it can. It doesn't really know where it's going, it just knows somewhere in that direction it's gonna be hit. And that could carry the A and B. So that's either anywhere from 0.5 kilotons all the way to a very nice and big 450 kilotons. So I'm assuming it would really carry the B variant more, because you know the size of it, so that would make more sense. But yeah, I think that's just quite interesting. I'm gonna have a look into more depth charge weapons, but this was just more of a one I liked more. I don't know really what I'm saying anymore. Anyway, thank you for watching this. If you made it to the end, then one, you're probably someone I know. I'm talking about a very specific person here. You know who you are. Or two, you just found this interesting. If you did, then cool, I guess. I'm bad at outros as well. Bad at intros, bad at outros. Anyway, gamers, I guess I'll see you around.